Peter and I were talking one day, and I'm like a super problem solver. I can't leave things unanswered that I don't have answers to. And talking to Peter about long-term care insurance, and how we can help people get over that 5-year window of look-back period for Medicaid. If maybe they don't have a healthy 5-year window, maybe it's looking really sketchy, or they're just older than usual. So when a client comes to me that's in their 90s, and I say that they need to stay healthy for 5 years, they're kind of giving me a look like, I don't know. So Peter and I started talking about how long-term care insurance might be able to carry them over the finish line. That conversation kind of led to, well, there's probably other gaps in estate plans that could be filled by other partners that maybe even Peter and I together can't solve the problem, that maybe we got to bring in somebody else. So typically when my clients come in, they ask me how we can accomplish certain things. And of course I say, well, what are our goals? What are our goals when it comes to estate planning? And these are the 4 that we really get the most often. I want to not be a burden. I don't want to leave a mess for my family members when I pass away. I want to protect assets. So I want to make sure that there actually is something at the time I pass that can go to my heirs. And I want those things to not be taken by a nursing home. So the nursing home in our conversations, it's kind of like the big bad boogeyman that's going to come and take everything, especially the house, as we get older. Avoiding probate. I don't get this quite as often, but the people that do want to avoid probate really want to avoid probate. So people that have been through a mess with their family, they see probate as this evil that we have to stay away from at all costs. And then I'm finding here now that we're getting people from California, New York, New Jersey, states that have a very onerous probate process. They come here and they assume ours is just as bad. So they want to avoid probate for those reasons. And then minimizing taxes. So a lot of our clients would like to avoid paying any taxes ever. Sadly, that's illegal and I can't completely minimize taxes down to 0. But certainly we can look at tax considerations and figure out what's the best way to address taxes. So proper estate planning, ensuring that there's no mess, that it's not going to be a burden. Doing a will or a trust. So at least having that document in place so that you're not dying intestate, that you're not just leaving it up to the courts to decide based on a statute where your things are going to go when you pass. And a lot of people think there's like a target age of where you should come out and start doing your will or start doing your estate planning. Really, that age is 18. So you're an adult now, you have belongings, you have assets, and it's not just defined by your parents. So at 18, really, you should be getting those things in order. Power of attorney. For financial legal decisions, there is no statutory power of attorney for us in the state of Pennsylvania. So once you turn 18, no one can act on your finances, make any legal or financial decisions for you without going through a guardianship hearing. And so powers of attorney, financial and legal power of attorney, allows you to access all financial and to do all transactions for that person. And a lot of my clients will say, well, I don't really need a power of attorney because my accounts are held jointly with my spouse. And they're adamant that everything they own is owned jointly with their spouse. And then of course I point out that the I in IRA stands for individual. So if you have an IRA, if you have a 401k that's not jointly held, and a lot of people, that's where the majority of their assets are. So for me, if I were to be incapacitated, there'd be a substantial amount of money in my retirement accounts that would need to go towards my kids, need to go towards my bills. If I were to be incapacitated and without a power of attorney, nobody could access those things. And it's funny because a lot of people will say, well, I beneficiary designated so-and-so. Well, that's fantastic if you die. So if you die, the assets will flow. If you go into a coma for 10 years, the money's just locked in there without somebody being able to access it. Then your healthcare directives. That's a set of instructions for your loved ones that says, this is what I would want done if I was in an end-stage medical condition, a permanent vegetative state. I do want a feeding tube. I don't want a feeding tube. I want a ventilator or a respirator. And then it names who your agent would be that would make that decision. Without that in place, Pennsylvania does have a statutory decision maker. It's your next of kin. But not everybody is exactly sure who their next of kin is, or maybe you have multiple people that are at that same level of next of kin. So your next of kin might be your siblings, which might have 5 of them. So you don't know which one's actually going to make those decisions for you. And do they know your wishes and are they able to carry them out? So I actually take that step further of, are they able to carry them out? My parents would be probably my next of kin because my kids are juveniles. My mom would never be able to carry out my wishes. I could name her, I could do the documents, I could put her in that place, and she just wouldn't be able to do it. I know my mom. She would never pull the plug. I'd be on that machine for decades. So alternatively, I named my brother. My brother's been waiting 36 years to pull the plug. I know that that's not a concern. If it comes down to it, he'll yank it. It's more than just documents. So obviously what we're talking about here are those documents. But it needs to coordinate with your plan. So your financial assets and your estate plan need to be a cohesive unit. And I see this as a problem probably 3 to 4 times a week, especially with trusts that are done basically anywhere other than where I work. So if you do a trust, it's worthless if it's not funded. If you haven't taken assets and titled them in the name of the trust or beneficiary designated them to the trust, then what you have is a useless stack of paper in one hand and all of your assets in another hand. Same thing kind of goes with wills. So I think a lot of people believe that their will controls where all their assets go when they die. And they're like, I named my kids 50-50 in my will. Here's a scenario of what really happens in practicality though. My older son turns 18 and I can't beneficiary designate to my younger son. I can only beneficiary designate to the 18-year-old. So I open an account and I beneficiary designate to him. And then I change and beneficiary on another account to him. And then I do my will, splitting things 50-50. And I think everything's going to go 50-50. Nothing's controlled by my will. Everything's controlled by those beneficiary designations. So what happens when I pass? Everything flows to my oldest kid. Or let's say they were both juveniles when I created the accounts and I named my brother. Now my brother is the beneficiary of my life insurance, the beneficiary of my accounts. He's on everything, and I have a will that says goes 50-50 to my kids. What do my kids get? Not a penny, because nothing flows through the will. So you have to coordinate your actual financial assets with the estate plan that you put in place. Inform your family. So if you make those beneficiary designations on accounts, it avoids probate, it flows smoothly. How does that institution know that you've passed? They don't unless somebody comes there and says something to them. So until somebody shows up with a death certificate and says, pay this out, it just sits there. And that's how you end up with those kind of government websites where eventually money is just kind of sitting out there in the ether, waiting for someone to show and collect it. So keep your family informed as to where your assets are, who's your attorney, where the power of attorney documents are located or how they would get them. And we like to keep people even more informed. So what it means to be an executor, what it means to be a power of attorney. That kind of prevents them from doing all the knuckleheaded stuff that they're not allowed to do ahead of time because we've already told them. If you're incapacitated and they take over and they've never been educated, they'll start doing all kinds of weird stuff that powers of attorney technically aren't allowed to do. And then keep your plan up to date. So sadly, one of the things that I see every single week, someone comes to have me review their documents and they pull out the old trifold will. It's in a bank envelope. It's dusty. It's written in some archaic script that we stopped using 20 years ago when we got computers. And they're asking me if the will is sufficient. Well, of course it's not sufficient. It's older than I am. You've had people born. You've had people die. The law has changed since this document was written on this tablet. And so keeping your plan up to date is extremely important. In 2019, the Secure Act was passed. That was a major financial overhaul. So if your document's pre-2019, it's not Secure Act compliant. But some of these documents are pre-1999. They don't address digital assets. They don't address anything of the modern era. So extremely important to keep your plan up to date. There are some key tax concerns when it comes to estate planning. So the federal gift and estate tax, basically, I hear it a lot. It's almost nonsense at this point. It's such an absurd amount of money that you can leave behind or gift that it literally applies to 0% of my clients. 13.61 million every individual can leave behind as an inheritance or gift away during their lifetime. The gift annual exclusion is 18,000. So that's actually in addition to the 13.61 million. I could give everyone in this room $18,000 every single year. I know you love that, right? I'll get right on it. And never touch my $13.61 million lifetime. However, even though the IRS says that I can gift $18,000 every single year without incurring a tax penalty, that does not mean that I can do it absolutely penalty free. That $18,000 gift is absolutely a gift for Medicaid purposes. So I hear people saying, I can give 18,000. According to the IRS, yes, you absolutely can. According to the Medicaid office, they will refuse to pay for your care for a month and a half if you gift 18,000. So you have to kind of keep that into consideration. The Pennsylvania inheritance tax currently ranges between 4.5% and 15%. That's if you're being taxed. So spouse to spouse transfers are 0. 4.5 would be up and down the family tree. So that would be parents, grandparents, down to children, grandchildren. 12% to siblings and 15% to anyone else. And when I say anyone else, that's nieces, nephews, unmarried couples, and total strangers get lumped into the same 15% category. And again, a lot of my clients want to pay 0 tax. They want to avoid taxes entirely. It's not mathematically possible or legally possible. So we look at what it's up against. Capital gains taxes. These two taxes are in conflict with each other. We're going to pay one and hopefully not the other. So the capital gains tax, we most often see it on real estate. If I go to sell a piece of real estate and I pay capital gains tax, it's going to range in that range between 15 and 37%. So to avoid this Pennsylvania inheritance tax, let's say my dad didn't want me to pay the 4.5% that I pay on the house. So he gifts it to me during its lifetime. I pay no inheritance tax. If I don't go live in his house or find another way to get a capital gains tax exemption, then I'll pay capital gains on the difference between what he paid for the house and what I sell it for. So let's say he paid $200,000 for it, I sell it for $600,000. I'll pay a tax in this range on $400,000. Whereas if he had just passed it to me at his passing, I'd have paid 4.5% on the whole thing. So ultimately 4.5% of 600,000 versus somewhere in the 20 to 25% range on 400,000. It's a significant tax difference. Do I need a will or should I use a trust? So all trusts avoid probate, whereas wills must be probated. There's a big misconception that probate is intestate succession. Intestate succession is when you die with no documents and the government has to sort out where your things go. Probate is when the court proves that your will is valid and then oversees the distribution process of your assets. That process is expensive. It's about 4% of your gross assets. It's totally overseen by the courts. It's lengthy, starting at 12 months and ranging on to several years, depending on the complexity of the estate. And then it's public. So the probate records are actually public records. And what we're seeing now is that people can actually pull those records, see who's inherited what money, and target them for scams. Also, legitimate, unethical businesses are targeting probate records for business. So people that liquidate estates and people who do auctioning will actually target those probate records to find clients. And the last thing I want is my kids either being targets of scams or receiving mailers saying, hire us, sorry about your debt. Wills are typically insufficient for blended families. So in a blended family situation, you've got a husband and wife that both have kids that are not shared, right? If husband, assuming he's going to pass away first, because statistically men die earlier than women do. If he wants to provide for his biological children, but he wants his wife to be able to remain in that home, he really can't accomplish both. So if he leaves the home to the wife, it's now her home. And she can do her own estate plan and leave it wherever she wants. Meaning that his biological kids might not receive a dime. Or he could leave it to his biological kids to ensure that they receive an inheritance. They could boot the wife out. They have no obligation to let her stay in. So wills are really not ever sufficient for blended families. Same thing goes not just with real estate, but with money. With money, you could either leave it with your spouse so that she has it to live out the rest of her days, or you can leave it to your kids as an inheritance. But once you leave it to the spouse, it's in their hands. You could never guarantee that it would flow back to the kids. However, with a trust, you can put terms in that the spouse has access to a portion or an annual percentage or distribution rates on a monthly basis. And ultimately, they have no control over where it flows at their passing. It flows to their kids. So as far as blended families goes, trusts are way better to use there than wills. Could you accidentally leave money to your ex or your child's ex? And with a will, the answer could be yes. So I always get a pretty good laugh out of people in the room, even people in their 80s. You know, they still find this stuff funny. But how many people love their ex so much that they would love to leave them an inheritance? Not many people. So in my situation, I'm a single father of juvenile children. If I leave all my money to my kids and I pass while they're still juveniles, it goes into an UTMA account, uniform transfers to minors account. The default guardian of that money is their biological parent, their default guardian, their legal guardian. So by the letter of the law, that money has to be used for my child's benefit. The level of oversight into that is zero, absolutely none. So essentially, I'm leaving that money to her to use for whatever she wants. I had a client who was not much older than me, 42 years old, terminal cancer. She's got a 15-year-old child who's never met their biological dad. He's a drug addict in Tennessee. $75,000 life insurance beneficiary designated directly to the child. 75,000 reasons for deadbeat dad to come back from Tennessee and be a pain in the butt in that child's life. The woman would rather set the money on fire than leave it to her kid because she doesn't want that guy coming back. And she thought that she had to do something, name any other person. Let's just have the life insurance pay out to a charity. And I said, no, we can set up a trust. The money pays into the trust. You've designated your best friend as the trustee. That money will be used for those kids' benefit and for nothing else. So, and we keep deadbeat dad out of the picture. Wills provide no asset protection. So when you create a will, it is totally useless as you are alive and well. It does nothing until you pass. So if you need to go into skilled care, if you need anything done while you're alive, it's doing nothing. It's strictly a device to pass your assets at the time you pass. So there is no asset protection there. However, as much as I've bashed wills, it absolutely can be sufficient if it's a well-written will, if you don't own any real estate, and you have minimal assets with no descendants. So if I don't have any children, and let's say my siblings are gone or I don't have any, I don't care if there's anything left behind when I pass, and I don't care where it goes. So in that case, a will would probably be sufficient. Real estate is a key factor because there's really no way in Pennsylvania to pass real estate outside of probate because other states have what's called a transfer on death deed. Pennsylvania doesn't have them. So we don't have that kind of convenient tool to write a beneficiary designation right on the deed. So trusts really help us there. But if you don't own any, let's say you've moved in with your children or you rent in some sort of community, then maybe a will would be sufficient for those people. Here I just created a basic don't do these things for estate planning. This is kind of the list that I wish all of my clients had gotten years before they met me so that they wouldn't have done these things prior to meeting me. So do not add your child as a joint account holder on your financial accounts. One, it exposes that account to all of their good and bad decisions, their legal problems, everything that happens to them in life. The other really crappy thing in Pennsylvania, let's say mom and dad add a child to their account and mom dies, they will charge an inheritance tax because they believe that the child has inherited mom's portion of the account. So the money was all mom and dad's to begin with. It's still going to be dad's now that mom is gone, but they've charged an inheritance tax on the portion that the daughter allegedly inherited. And even worse, let's say the daughter passed away, the parents would pay 50% pay inheritance tax on 50% of the account because they're assuming that the parents have inherited from the daughter, even though it was never her money to begin with. Do not add your child to your deed. So when you do that, one, again, you're exposing that house, but you're also causing a tax issue. So because you are gifting the house to them, they are now getting a carryover basis on the portion that you've gifted to them, rather than getting a step up in basis at death. So my grandmother is my perfect example. She paid $16,000 for her farm in 1955. She still lives there. If she gifted me half, added me to the deed, half of my basis when I go to calculate capital gains would be $8,000. Imagine a $400,000 property and I can only deduct $8,000 as my purchase price. I would much rather inherit it at the date of death value to be able to take a wash on the capital gains. Don't gift your child your home. Same thing, carry over tax basis, and you completely give up control of your home. So when you start to get elderly and it's questionable, can I take care of myself? Is it time for me to go to the nursing home? You've given the upper hand to your child and you've gifted that home to them. So at that point, they can really strong arm you to going into a facility maybe sooner than you want. Don't delay getting your documents in place. So as you've already heard me say, 18 to me is the magic number. You turn 18, you're an adult, you should have some basic level of documents in place, a power of attorney and a will, even if you have minimal assets. And then do not pay for skilled nursing care or apply for Medicaid without talking to an attorney. It's horrible to me when someone says, yeah, we lost $135,000 to a nursing home. We lost $400,000 to a nursing home. I had a client the other day, literally doing her own estate planning documents. And she says to me, I'm really worried about my parents. We've been paying privately for mom's nursing home for 3 years. Now, of course, I said, that'll be the last payment you ever write. I'm going to send you to my Medicaid office and they're going to take care of things. But that's $400,000 that they lost in those 3 years. Had they just come and talked to us 3 years ago, none of that money would have been lost. And then if you apply for Medicaid, a lot of nursing homes are going to say, here you go, welcome to our facility, here's a Medicaid application. You can lock in certain snapshots of your assets, and maybe we didn't want, them seeing all of that. Let's say you made a gift 4 years and 364 days ago. We want to wait another 3 days before we lock in that gift as a penalty for us. Common issues, how do I stay in my home longer rather than going into a facility? What if I don't think I can stay healthy for 5 more years? And how do I pay for assisted living or memory care? So what we do when we're trying to shelter assets in an asset protection trust, we are trying to get that out of your hands so that nobody can count it as a resource, either for lawsuits or for skilled care. This is one of those gaps that I was talking about in the beginning. How do I pay for assisted living or memory care? And unfortunately, our estate plan really doesn't address that. That's typically going to be private pay. So that's kind of how this discussion led into partnering with outside resources. And that transitions into my friend Peter to talk about some long-term care insurance, how that can help you pay privately for either, assisted care. For display settings, is it on extend or is it on video?
Right, happens to all of us, yes.
Do what I find, minimize this. Got it. See that? Yes. There you go. 35 billion. Slide through. All right, that was on. You got it. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Jay. Clicker works too. Okay. Now we're rolling. This is awesome. Very cool. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I also want to thank Attorney Palomo for letting us use his office and Attorney Metzbower for masterminding this and
driving it. Also Jessica Delp, who I think some of you may know, she's also with, the Paloma team. She helped us with some of the marketing, and et cetera. Rosalind Rotar Cassidy, if I pronounce her last name right. Did I do it okay? I've been working on it, so. And Angie Stringer, so they're remote, they're part of the Paloma team, part of the marketing team, they help us with this as well. And thank you to Meg for introducing me to Katie and Brittany and helping us get, some guests as well, so, and, just want to do some shout outs. So my name is Peter Francis. I own an insurance company here locally. And Jay and I were talking about some of the things that happen when things start to happen to people, and how do you navigate that? So I do a lot of this type of stuff. So I was like, yep, let's partner up, and the presentation was awesome. It's perfect. So I always like to get to know folks. I talk a little bit about myself, which I don't like doing, but I kind of have to go first because it was like 9 of you and now we're gone. Right? My parents are Greek immigrants. I was born and raised in North Pennsylvania. I graduated with honors from Wilbur High School, attended Bentley University in Waltham, Massachusetts. I was a founding member of the debate team on the student unit in the United Nations. Served in the Marine Corps Reserve for 8 years. Lived in Boston. After college, I moved back in 2006 to support my parents. I currently live in Red Line, Pennsylvania, which is a small town about 30 minutes away. So my business history. I started my business in 2013 out with my mom. I had a mortgage business at the time. It was doing really great. My dad had just passed. My mom had a question about her life insurance policy, so I called her back, sold it to her. And he was not a nice guy. And I was like, okay, I can figure this out. So I got my license, and I'm Greek. I don't know if you know Greeks, but they have select urine. So they heard I had my insurance license. The Affordable Care Act had just passed. A lot of them were paying fines because their restaurants or their dry cleaners or whatever business they had, they weren't up to ACA standards. So I got flooded with customers right off the bat. The ironic thing is I only had my life insurance license. So I had to go back and take the test all over again. I didn't know there were 2 different licenses. So today I have a little over 1,100 clients, actually close to 1,200 clients, and I do all of this stuff. I do healthcare provision, short-term disability, long-term disability, accident, cancer, critical illness, long-term care and short-term care, 2 separate things. A lot of Medicare business, a lot of Medicare, Medicaid business as well, and that sort of stuff. So pretty much anything in life insurance space and health insurance. So a little bit about my business. So some of the carriers that I work with off to the left, I'm licensed in 20 states, and I also have contracts with a lot of those exchanges. So like Penny, Delaware, things like that. Once I go over for people that are either self-employed or can't get insurance. What I do is a little bit different, and 1, 2, 3, I have 3 clients in the room, so I'm sure they'll test this. So I take a pretty detailed approach to my process, and Katie actually referred a gentleman from her facility. I appreciate that. He's an awesome guy. I take a very, very detailed approach to what I do. I like to learn about prescriptions, providers, how someone's going to use the plan. If it's a health insurance plan or a Medicare plan, if it's a life insurance plan, what's the purpose? If it's a long-term plan, I'd be sure this is going to suit your needs, because we're going to get into that in a minute. Sometimes people get something because they read about it or saw it on 60 Minutes or something. That's still a thing, by the way, for those of you like 60 Minutes. Yeah, I get that call all the time. So 60 Minutes. Yeah, pump the brakes. And I do a lot throughout the year with clients as well. So it's not just enrollment, it's how's the plan working for you? Did you get your ID cards? I've been responding to people who need to find a doctor network, check prescription if it's covered enough. So I'm very hands-on when it comes to stuff. Also want to do a disclaimer. So when it comes to this kind of stuff, keep in mind that what I'm going to share with you is based on the research that I've done over the last 11 years that I've been in business. A lot of it you can do yourself, and if it is something you're interested in some capacity, I would suggest doing it on your own, because that's really the best way to learn. It's not just me going, hey, right? Jay's got his opinion, great opinion. You're gonna hear from Katie and Brittany as well. They have their opinions. We'll eventually hear from Meg. We'll have Lisa speaking as well at another workshop. So the goal behind this is to just kind of get the wheels turning, get you thinking about things, because we want to educate folks, and it's not always our opinion that might be the one thing. So just want to make sure everybody knows that. We'll get into some data. So I like defining things. So let's talk about long-term care for a second. Let's see it up here. So You can define long-term care in a couple of ways. I can't see it. But you can see the overall term, the overall definition of long-term care, and then short-term care. Short-term care is typically under 12 months. Now, this is in the insurance world. This is not what I would call it in the healthcare world. It's a whole separate beast, right? So in the insurance world, someone's calling to buy something where they're looking for a purpose, they're looking for somebody to solve a problem. My question is, what's the length of time? When do you expect to use it? So if they're expecting to use it within a year, and depending on what they're planning on doing, that's typically a short-term care policy or a long-term care policy. You're gonna hear about ADLs. I know several of us kind of live in that world. It's like air, right? It's part of our day-to-day lives. So what's an ADL? It's a fundamental skill that people need to care for themselves independently. Driving's not an ADL, right? You've got eating, toileting, transferring, which I was doing, bathing, dressing, and continence. Cognitive impairment. Oh gosh, I thought I capitalized. Sorry about that. Cognitive impairment. That's something you'll hear about as well. And that's very important because that's one of the things that will trigger a life insurance policy or long-term care policy or something that would give someone a benefit towards long-term care or short-term care. And then this one, which is really small, and I apologize, is I get this question every now and again because I do a lot of these long-term care seminars, are familial laws or familial responsibility laws. So for those of you that don't know, Pennsylvania is one of the states that has it as law. It's also one of the handful of states that's ever enforced it. There was a pretty famous case years ago where a person had passed away. I think it was a long-term care facility. It's been so long, I don't remember the story. You can Google it. And the son didn't realize that he was responsible for that 90-some, 100-some, whatever $1,000 bill it was. And the state of Pennsylvania found in favor of the facility and held the son responsible. So Pennsylvania is one of the only ones that'll do that. The reason I mention that is people get kind of weird about financial responsibilities when it comes to their parents. It's not mine, it's mine. I mean, on the attorney side, I'm sure you see it. On the healthcare side, I'm sure you've seen it too. It kind of takes us down to, I guess, sometimes like a basic nature. So sometimes you see the worst of it. But the reason I even put it on there is sometimes people will ask about it. So it's just a rule that requires adult children or other relatives to support their impoverished family members and include financial obligations. Doesn't mean it's going to be enforced, but again, Pennsylvania is one of the few that had a case that we're going to talk about Medicare, Medicaid. We're also going to talk about the Medicaid partnership. So the Medicaid partnership, what you'll see in a little bit is Medicaid at a federal and a state level is the sole provider for a lot of services. And because of that, because of the aging population, it's getting more difficult for them to be able to finance stuff. I'm sure a lot of people like, hey, when's Social Security going to run out? When's Medicaid going to run out of money? Question. So what you'll see is that there are some things that are drifting people towards other options other than Medicaid. It's not necessarily that people are trying to do it. It's that the federal and state governments are doing it. For example, Medicaid partnership is something that most states have. And that just means that the long-term care insurance companies that are selling a policy in that state have partnered with the Medicaid plan. So those proceeds do not affect Medicaid. So that's something that they've had on the books for some time now. And it is a big deal because I know G and I were talking about this just the other day about what money can affect somebody's Medicaid, eligibility determination. And then there's also the Deficit Reduction Act. Again, back in 2005, there hasn't been a lot of traction about this, but I always want to get a question about this for someone who's read about it. So it's a federal law that gives states the ability to change their Medicaid programs. The goal behind the law, or the act rather, was so that long-term care was available for those who needed it, and it discouraged Medicaid planning techniques so that people weren't allowed to transfer assets, things like that, like what Jim was talking about earlier. This is a law that was passed to try and keep that stuff from happening. Because again, they're saying, hey, we're underfunded. We're going to run out of money. That's their way of seeing it. So just all these things to think about when it comes to stuff. So there's 3 levels of care, although. My pointer's. Oh yeah, right, it doesn't work on the TV, so imagine my pointer pointing to intermediate. Right? So intermediate care kind of gets morphed in. Most people, if you ask them, they know about 2, there really isn't 3. But again, on the insurance side, there's 3. So the first one is skilled care. And when you're thinking about Medicare covering something, that's typically where skilled care is going to come in. It's not skilled care, it's typically not going to get covered depending on what it is, depending on what program you're on. So skilled care is the first. It's designed for individuals requiring a high level of monitoring by medical professionals like a nurse or physical therapist. The objective is rehabilitative, and we're going to hear that word a lot. Rehabilitative, and the care is provided with the goal of returning function to the individual so they can return home. They don't want them to stay there. That's not their purpose. It's catch and release, right? So examples: recovering from surgery or medical condition that requires hospitalization, learning to walk with artificial limbs, following a brain injury, etc. Intermediate care is skilled care, but on a lower level because someone doesn't really need that type of attention all the time. So designed for individuals that only need assistance by medical professionals on an intermittent basis. The example is someone needs surgical breast exchange every 6 hours. They don't need a doctor or a nurse or physical therapist with them all the time. It's limited, it's intermediate, so it's here and there as needed. But again, it's still skilled or rehabilitative. It's still in that space because it's not custodial. Custodial is that's the bad one in the insurance group, because people think, oh, I'm going into this facility and I'm going to be able to get help. I'm going to be able to get this for it. So custodial is the third, and it's the most common one. And it's the most common, and we'll see why aging population, just conditions, things like that. So it's designed for individuals that need help performing the activities of daily living, those things we were talking about earlier, bathing, eating, continence, etc. The objective is not rehabilitative. So it's not a, we're going to fix you up, you're leaving, you're staying. Unless, of course, you're going to move to another facility like that. So the care is provided with the goal of enabling the person to lead as much as possible an independent life. So examples would include Alzheimer's and dementia, disability due to a stroke, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's. So these are things that would keep somebody where they are. Fortunately, there is no way around that. So 3 different types of care. We're to receive long-term care, and this is where these lovely ladies are going to. So you've got nursing homes, alternate care facilities. Now keep in mind that you can call these things by different names and that kind of in other categories too. But from an insurance standpoint, when someone is calling to file a claim for like a long-term care policy, what's very common too is people buy a life insurance policy and they can turn that into a cash value, which will affect a trust unless the trust is the payor and the owner, right? You get that right? Yes, right. So Jay's been coaching me, and so my clients call me, I'm like, hold on, I gotta get you in. So, yep. So 4 basic categories, but again, understand just like with the levels of care, these can kind of morph into one another. So you've got a nursing home. It's a facility providing long-term care services, 24 hours a day, performed by or under the supervision of a nurse. Physician is available for emergency care. It may occupy its own building, but it has to be a state part of another facility like a hospital. Again, I mean, when someone's filing a claim for the insurance, that's what they need to see the insurance company to see. They provide skilled care, intermediate care, custodial care. They cannot only offer custodial care. If they do, then they don't qualify as a nursing home in the insurance book. Alternate care facility designed for people that do not need all of the services provided by a nursing home. Do not offer skilled care or intensive medical care. Examples include but are not limited to assisted living, Alzheimer's, custodial care facilities, community-based professional care facility. This one throws a lot of folks off. Again, it's not really a common way of calling it, of describing it. So think of like adult daycare. Most people heard of adult daycare. That's what this would fall in under for insurance purposes. Custodial support, someone comes to the house, nutritional counseling, because this can still be this in the house. So just basically someone's coming to help for different purposes. And then you've got in-home care as well. In-home care can be paid or unpaid, and it doesn't matter. Some long-term care insurance policies will actually pay for training for the person, which is kind of neat. Some don't, so it kind of depends on the person's plans and things like that. And care can be custodial or skilled, it doesn't matter when it comes to. All right, let's look at the statistics. So the population segment growing at the fastest rate is comprised of individuals age 85 and older. Isn't that insane? I know you guys see it all the time, so I make too, but crazy, right? And this is, so let me back up. So keep in mind, a lot of the numbers you're gonna see are 2020. 2020 was basically the last time a lot of the national studies were done, surveys were done. Because there was this thing that happened that I think everybody knows about, right? 2019 to 2023. So they were not like walking around surveying, long-term care facilities or assisted living facilities. That's about it. And prior to that, 2019 was a big study for a lot of companies, and then 2015. So typically every 4 to 5 years is when they do this kind of stuff. So this is probably about 5 years old, ish, 2020. So someone turning 65 today, again, I would say this was 2020, has a 70% chance of needing some type of long-term care. That's probably the number most people hear. And it does kind of depend. Women need care longer than men. They typically live longer than men. And they're typically the ones that are looking after their spouse. They may typically get chronic conditions because they were looking after their spouse. So, 20% of today's 65-year-olds will need long-term care for more than 5 years. That's the biggest concern, is how long am I going to need this for? This is what Jay was talking about before. How long will you need money or some way to pay for whatever care you're needing? 69% of people age 90 or older have a disability. People who live alone are more likely to need paid care. Makes sense, right? If you live alone, you're not able to perform any of those 6 functions of daily living. You're going to need to pay someone to come and help. Chronic conditions such as diabetes and high blood pressure make it more likely a person to need long-term care. Family history, poor diet, and exercise habits will typically increase someone's chances of needing long-term care. 80%, this is pretty interesting, 80% of care at home is provided by unpaid caregivers. So typically spouses, family members. And again, care doesn't necessarily need to be you're there all the time. Like for instance, for my mom, I'll pick her up, drop her off, do her grocery shopping, things like that for her. So it can be something as simple as that. On average, caregivers spend 20 hours a week giving care, and more than half have intensive care giving responsibilities that may include assisting with personal care activities such as bathing or feeding. So here's one of the studies, 2015 by AARP, I think everybody knows who they are by now, National Alliance on Caregiving. About 43.5 million people in the US had been an unpaid caregiver in the last 12 months. 2/3 of them were women, and 14% who care for older adults are themselves age 65 or more. So what you're finding is a lot of older folks are choosing to age in place is a term that some of you may have heard. They're staying home, and who's looking after them, choosing a spouse or their children. So, all right, let's look at the numbers. So again, this is as of 2023. Why? Because 2024 is not over yet. It's not the answer. But 2023 is the most recent number. And this is for zip code 17601, where we're standing. So this is easy. You can just go to longtermcare.gov, or you can also go to Genworth.com. Genworth is an insurance company that also offers long-term care policies. But they've kind of built themselves around really more of an education piece than selling insurance. So they have a calculator on their website, and this is where I got this from. So you've got home health care, you've got community and assisted living, they lump those together, and then you've got nursing home facility care costs. So this is average for the year for this zip code. So hourly rate for home health aid is $31. Hourly rate for homemaker, different level of service, level of care is $21. Daily rate for home health, $192. Daily rate for homemaker, $132. Monthly rate for home health, $5,800. That's a lot of money for somebody to be paying for somebody to come to the house. Monthly rate for homemaker, $4,000. Annual rate, $69,000. That could have been more than somebody was making when they were working. Could be more than their annual income. Annual rate for homemaker, $48,000. Again, that's home. Community assisted living costs for 17601 for last year. There was no daily adult day health care cost, or monthly for adult daycare or annual. So for this category, it was just assisted living, so $202 a day, that can't be right, that's gotta be 6,000? Yeah, I'm thinking that's 6,100, don't know why that decibel's there. That decimal. So 61, I probably should have been comma, so 61, sorry about that. So 6,135 is what I'm thinking, because if I do the math, that'll probably come out to around $73,620 per year for assisted living. And then nursing home, that's the larger one there with the broader scope of medical services. Daily rate for semi-private room, $430. Daily rate for private, $495. Monthly rate semi-private, $13,000. Monthly rate private, $15,000. Annual rate for semi-private. Keep in mind, this is just those particular services, those facilities. We're not even talking about like memory care, cost more. We're not talking about other services you have on top of that. Okay, what are the most common ways to pay? This was what Jay was talking about earlier. So there's 5 basic categories, but most people don't know about most of these until I start talking to them and start seeing if there's other ways rather than necessarily buying a long-term care insurance. It's not that it's bad. I just want to make sure that if someone's going to buy it, they know why they're buying it. They don't have other resources, or they know why they're doing it, basically. So personal funds, that could be your social security income, pension, IRA, 401k, interest income, dividends from investments, cash, savings, stocks, bonds, sale of real estate. And it's not uncommon for people to sell their house to be able to afford their long-term care costs. If you know anyone in that position, you know a good realtor who's in the room today, be happy to help. But the question always is it enough? If someone is going to sell their home, is it going to be enough for whatever they're going to need? So it's one thing to keep in mind, and that's how all of this sort of plays out. Then there's private finance. So what is private finance? That's when you're not using your money, you're using somebody else's. So you can use a short or long-term care insurance policy. You can also use the equity in your home. You're not selling it though. You're doing cash on finance, home equity on credit, you're doing a reverse mortgage. You've heard of that. You can also buy a life insurance policy. There are life insurance policies where if you are unable to perform 206 activities of daily living, the insurance company will actually allow you to get a lump sum from the policy. So if you're getting, let's say, $100,000 policy, a lot of companies would allow you to get 95% of that, so that you can still live, you know, purchase prescriptions, medications, okay, do doctor visits, etc. They leave something behind to bury you. But as we mentioned before, if you do have a trust, that would interfere with the trust. So the owner and the payor, owner, executor, owner, and
Family
beneficiary. Yeah,
beneficiary.
owner beneficiary would need to be the trust. And then we've also got trusts, which Jay was talking about earlier. But here's the other thing too. This is something interesting that he shared too. Is in order to, and I want to make sure I got this right. So trust, it has to be irrevocable in order for it to pay for services. But the problem is irrevocable will affect Medicaid, and that's because if you can do something with it, anybody can, right? Anybody can access the money.
They're revocable. So the revocable, you can pull money.
Revocable.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're gonna change that. So revocable.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you can pull it out freely, they're gonna tell you, go ahead and pull it out and pay for your care.
Yep. So revocable trust is one way of doing it. Annuities as well. It's a bad word, I know. But there are riders you can add on to an annuity where you are again able to perform 2 to 6 functions of daily living. You'd be able to start receiving a monthly income stream. Again, may affect Medicaid, may affect the trust. This is kind of something separate. There's also these things called viatical settlements and life settlements. Some people have heard of them, some have not. They're basically the same thing, but you're selling your life insurance policy to a broker or someone that's buying it for a lump sum. The difference is viatical is they're terminally ill. Life is they're not terminally ill. Some folks have had life insurance policies for a long time. There's cash value. Why they don't cash them out, I don't know. Why they don't surrender them, just get the cash value. No, they're selling them. So, but those are ways to pay for it. This is, you know, these are options. Private Medicare insurance plans. So you've got Medicare Advantage plans, Medicare supplement plans. They will not cover custodial care. And it's got to be resident. It's got to be skilled, and it's also got to be. They give you that yesterday, you rehabilitate it. So thanks, Nick. Yep, nonprofit facilities. This is one a lot of folks don't know about, but again, I do get questions about this every once in a while. So I'm not gonna tell you that this is gonna work every time. However, there are some that when you do run out of money, they will not ask you to leave. Those are usually faith-based, and I'm sure you're already guessing. They're usually long waiting lines, and there's typically not a lot of them. So, but that is an option that sometimes folks don't know about. And then you've also got state and federal government programs. So Medicare, again, custodial personal care is not covered. Medicaid, custodial, actually, that should be wrong. So that should be Medicaid, custodial personal care is covered. Medicaid and the VA are the only two federal programs which have to qualify for custodial care. And then there's VA healthcare, and then there's state-funded long-term care program. So I want to talk about that for a second, because a lot of folks haven't heard about that, or maybe you have. So this started probably about 10 years ago. So because of the cost for the state for Medicaid, again, that's one of the reasons why that federal law was passed back in 2005. But what a lot of states are doing is they're in the process, a lot of them haven't done it, they're in the process of enacting a payroll tax to people, so that way they will have money for their long-term care expenses when it comes time, and they don't have to fall out of Medicaid. It's not going so well, only a few states have moved it out. We're still kind of trying to figure out all the details, but it is a way, and it's actually a federal program. It's managed at the state level. And then you also got home modification. A lot of those are managed through PFHA, whatever that organization is, on the state level. So a home modification loan would be if you get a ramp in, or get grab bars. So it's not going to actually pay for long-term care, but it's a way to pay for services so that folks can stay in their home to avoid laying in the facility. What are the most common ways? There's actually only a few. So Medicaid's the most common. VA is just as common as well, but again, you got to qualify for both. We talked about Medicare. Medicare will not pay for one type of long-term care, but it will pay for the other two. And then private finance, short or long-term care insurance, and more life insurance policies are appropriate. Those are the most common ways to get it. And then these are some of the resources that I used. They're pretty available. We've got the Agency on Aging. I gave the Lancaster number there. Department of Veteran Affairs, Elder Locator, longtermcare.gov is a great resource. Medicare, Medicaid, et cetera, Social Security Administration, and U.S. Department of Housing and Development. And also, I don't know if anyone's ever been to one of Meg's workshop, but she does a great workshop on long-term care, on life care planning, where she talks about a lot of this stuff too. So if you ever have a chance to check out her. All right, so I'm done. So I get to introduce, yeah, you two ready?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, great. So Katie and Brittany are joining us from Providence Place, so we're lucky to have them. We're gonna get firsthand account of what the facilities are like and what options are and all that sort of stuff. So we're definitely lucky to have them. So Brittany is the director of sales
Correct.
at the facility.
Yes.
Okay, and Katie is the sales director.
Regional director.
Regional director, I'm gonna get that eventually. Regional director.
Whatever you want.
For Providence. I don't care.
Yeah.
Paycheck cash.
It's a young back.
Yep. Great, awesome. Look at that.
Very nice. One. I can try music with it. I can't promise it's gonna work.
Oh, nice.
I guess that's for us. Let me just see if it works real quick. All right, so hi everyone, I am Katie Sanders, like Peter said, from Providence Place, and I'm Brittany Sapkowski, I'm also from Providence Place. So we're here to just give you a summary of different options, very kind of basic summary of the different opportunities that could present themselves for not only maybe your loved ones, yourselves, in many years from now, because you're all very young. But we'll just cover the basics, and then if you have any questions at the end, we're happy to answer them. So navigating senior living can be very overwhelming. It's a loss of control, loss of financial freedom, as well as like you feel like you're losing your life as you know it. It doesn't have to be that way, like Perry Rogers said. Often when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else.
Yes, and certainly with a lot of what we learned today from both Attorney Metzbower and from Peter, just about the different types of options that are out there. I know you might be overwhelmed, it's confusing, but it doesn't have to be. Because there's a lot of resources out there, like utilizing these lovely gentlemen, Paloma and Associates has a lot of helpful resources and people as well. And there's a lot of services, especially in our area for senior services. So I don't want you to feel that this has to be a stressful decision. And like Katie said, you have lots and lots of time, and that's a blessing. And that's what we're trying to promote as well, just educating ahead of time. So we will be learning a lot about that. Absolutely. So you might be thinking, think to yourself, retirement, okay? It's not always 65, okay? It might not be. I hope it is, but it might not be. So your definition of retirement, and think what do you think a retirement community is? I hope you're not thinking nursing home, because it doesn't always have to be that. There's a lot of other options available, which we'll dive into. And how would you like to spend your days? Would you like to volunteer? Are you interested in exploring those other options ahead of time? And Katie will talk a lot more about that.
Absolutely. So like Brittany said, retirement isn't always the same picture for everybody. Some people are focused on spending more time with their children, maybe their spouses, traveling abroad. Maybe you're looking to pick up a new hobby, or maybe even still continue to work part-time or do something for fun. So retirement looks different for everybody. And when you're looking at or exploring options for your retirement, as well as placement for your loved ones, your parents or grandparents, take into account what's most important to them.
Yes, and a lot of what we're here to educate about today is choices. So senior living and future planning is supposed to be flexible. You know, certainly, I don't think anybody in this room is saying, I want my kids to manage everything with my future. I'm gonna sign everything over to them. And whatever they want to do is fine. Because that might not be. So we definitely want to promote making your own choices, but how can you do that if you don't know the options that are out there? So we definitely want to promote safety, security, and a sense of purpose. And we'll be educating on what is out there as far as future planning.
So it's time to be intentional. Life after 60 is about planning for the future. You want to be proactive and not reactive. A lot of times families and residents that come to us, or prospects that come to us, excuse me, are coming to us during catastrophic events in their lives. They thought this would never happen to me. I was never going to be in this situation. I was going to be happy and home forever. So you need to find meaning and purpose, but you really need to understand your options, because the last thing you want is to be sitting in the hospital, have a social worker or a doctor tell you you can't go home, and then have no real opportunity to explore what is available for you. You're really forced in that decision. And most importantly, be open and communicate with others. We've had a lot of people come to us and our friends that we work with, all of our competitors as well, that said their kids had no idea they were sick. Their kids had no idea they were having falls at home, or there was all these other issues going on. So communication is key.
And a lot of goals for today. We are going to explore the different options for senior living. There are quite a few, which should be refreshing. There's a lot of flexibility with what you choose to do with your future. And we also want to see what's the best choice for you, and what may work for your mom may not work for you. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind with that. And also you want to, when you're planning for the future, yes, you might be healthy and thriving and striving today, but you have to prepare as well. You would need some more assistance in the future. Do I have those plans set up? Do I have a plan B? Can I get that support with the option I've chosen?
So why do people choose retirement communities? Some of them are planners. I don't want my kids to make, like Brittany said earlier, you know, most people, except for Meg, don't want their kids to plan their future for them. They want to be able to have control over that, because the loss of control is probably the biggest fear we get when people are expressing their concerns with the transition to a community. They're worried about their physical, financial, or emotional health, and they want security in that. They want to make sure there's funds set aside. They want to make sure that they're not going to deplete everything they've worked their entire life for. Some people are tired of home maintenance. I know that I'm 35 years old and I hate mowing, I hate weeding. I would rather pay people to do that now. So I can't imagine if I added some kind of physical limitation or just natural aging. So they're tired of home maintenance. They don't want to have to worry about that anymore. And of course, we have people that are looking for more. Maybe they lost a spouse. Maybe they're lonely. Maybe they just want to explore a new opportunity. So that's people that are looking for retirement communities are typically in one of these categories.
Yes, and it's no secret, if anyone has been paying attention in the real estate market, it's hot, as we know, right? So, as specific to Lancaster County, you might be surprised to know that homes sold for 8.5% more than they did just 1 year ago. So what does that mean? I mean, when you're planning for your future, right now, we're in a seller's market, may not always be that way, but it's certainly a good time now, if you do own a home, have those assets, to sell your home and use that money. And that money can be used for several different reasons. It can be used to pay an entrance fee or to financially qualify at a continuing care retirement community or CCRC. Or you can use that money to help pay for years of other types of care like assisted living, home care, and especially with an assisted living or independent option, you do set aside or have the flexibility to set aside the money from your home to establish a significant nest egg for your loved ones. So when we've been talking about options and options, let's dive into them. So to overview some options that are available, independent living. So it's exactly what it sounds like. You transition to a community, sometimes a home or a villa or even a cottage, or simply an apartment building for seniors where you have the independence. You typically don't have assistance, and in some communities may have to pay for meals or different things like transportation, on-call nursing. Assisted living comes into place when you do need some more help yourself or a spouse, or you anticipate needing some help in the future. And skilled care, like Peter talked about, is typically when you do need that nurse oversight, doctor oversight, even rehab. Skilled care setting is typically when those needs cannot be met in an independent or assisted living community.
Absolutely. So we'll talk a little more about these specific entities and what people choose or what they're looking for their future. So aging in place, everyone we talk to, probably without fail, said that when they bought their house, they never imagined leaving it. So they may have bought a cute rancher and they thought, oh, I'll modify this thing to the heavens. I'll get these walk-in tubs and then I'll make my kitchen handicap accessible. And I'll add a ramp outside my home, see the doorway, widen the doorway. And they don't realize the significant financial constraints that adds to their plans. They don't take into account the fact that formal and informal supports are a huge part of being able to stay in your home. So whether your children are willing to step up and be your caretaker, or even if it's just managing your grounds or taking over finances, or if you have to hire formal support, like Peter was talking about earlier. Right now, the average cost for in-home care it ranges, like you said, with our diving into our research, it's like $28 to $33 right now in Lancaster. Of course, we always have the agencies that are competing. I'm the cheapest, I'm the best. So the cost is significant. So you have to have the formal, informal supports if your care needs change. Older adults who age in place often, like I said, modify their homes, hire home health care providers, and they endure the risk of staffing concerns. Now, it's no secret across the greater Lancaster County area, there's always going to be staffing issues in any entity, whether it be skilled nursing, assisted living, independent living, or even within your own home. So the scary portion of this, though, is if you're living outside of a community setting, when the coworker or the workers don't show up to support mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, it's all on the child. It's all on the grandchild. So that is a significant risk. Although this looks wonderful and everyone wants to age in their place, age in place in their home, it's not as realistic anymore.
And talking a little bit more about continuing care retirement communities, which I'll refer to as CCRCs. So a CCRC is part independent living, part personal care or assisted living, and also part skilled nursing. So typically in a CCRC model, those are your big communities. You might even have to drive to get to the cafeteria or the dining room, go to the pool. Beautiful, beautiful communities. Typically people move into like a cottage, a villa, a small home, and they do transition or move to other areas of this campus as their needs change. So it's great for older adults who don't want to worry about arranging future care because typically their needs can be met through end of life, including skilled care and how it works. So again, people typically start out in independent living. The costs, CCRCs are one of the most expensive long-term care options that there are. There's typically a significant entrance fee upwards of $300,000-$400,000 depending on the campus. And also you do pay a monthly fee as well. That increases as your needs increase. So when you're looking for your future, if you anticipate needing assistance or skilled care, just keep that in the back of your mind as well when you explore one of these options. And while it might be attractive to stay in one setting, typically, like I said, you do transition in different parts as your needs change, different homes, different apartments. And there is a significant waiting list for most of these models in our area.
So like Brittany was saying, with the CCRC model, although it could be appealing to say a 65-year-old who is really healthy and looking to get the biggest bang out of their buck for that entrance fee and knowing that the rest of their life could be supported in that setting, like Brittany shared, multiple moves are what we're trying to avoid. Families do not want their mom and dad, or individuals do not want to move from a villa to an apartment, to a 300 square foot personal care apartment as well, then move into a skilled facility. And a lot of times they lose that control as their needs increase in these CCRC settings. Assisted living is residential senior living that, in addition to providing a safe environment and vibrant lifestyle, offers personalized support with activities of daily living, like Peter touched on earlier. Typically, there is not a significant upfront cost, so it's a very affordable option as opposed to the CCRCs. The month-to-month availability for payment is very appealing to people. It's almost like they feel as though they can try before they buy. They have the option to leave these settings in assisted living and personal care communities if they feel as though it's not matching their support needs or their model, the model of what they were projecting for their future. But also it gives options for them to relocate with family, relocate with children if that opens up, and they're not losing a significant deposit that they put in these CCRC communities. We are regulated by the Department of Human Services, so there is no lack, just because we don't have, most of these facilities don't have the large properties as well as the pools and other aspects. We still have the same regulations and they expect the same quality and care to be supported within these facilities.
And when we're talking about assisted living, certainly there are a lot of advantages. Some of those include a lot of social reasons. I mean, especially when you're looking at independent living or assisted living, even memory care, just having people around your age, having the opportunity to go on a bus trip, go to the movie theater with your friends, and also to have that safety, that's such a huge part of it as well. Assisted living communities are typically staffed around the clock, so you would always have that support. And it also does provide a very home-like setting. It's not synonymous with skilled nursing or a nursing home. Typically, people that come to assisted living have their own apartment, their own kitchen, bathroom. It's essentially like downsizing, but still having that peace of mind as well.
And of course, there is skilled nursing. Now, there is a, I guess you would say, I'm losing the word, but essentially everyone thinks that retirement communities are nursing homes. Everyone that comes in the tour goes, I don't want to move to a nursing home. So there's a huge difference. So nursing homes are medical facilities. They're designed to provide short-term skilled rehabilitation services as well as long-term options for those who have either their healthcare needs have surpassed what is safely able to be managed inside of a personal care or assisted living facility. That is not limited to, but does include things like if they would have a trach, feeding tube that's not self-managed, if they would require routine IV medications, or if there's a behavioral aspect that needs to be regulated or controlled with medications. We can't do that inside of the assisted living and personal care facilities because we do not have the same regulations and availability to the higher acuity or the clinical staff. So skilled nursing, there are people that need to be in this setting. But as Peter touched on earlier, right now, the average cost is $400 to $490 a day. And that $400 means you could have up to 2 additional roommates. You can't control different aspects of your day, although there's activities. Within those facilities, they definitely are more the nursing home settings, meaning that you have a lot of control of what you want to do in your daily life. In contrast, though, assisted living and personal care facilities are designed to feel more like home, not as clinical. And the average cost for our communities are $80 to $230 a day, so much more affordable. Now, Medicare and private insurance may cover a portion of the skilled care stays or the skilled nursing stays. But of course, long-term options for payment in skilled facilities do allow those who have exhausted all financial availability to tap into their Medicaid benefits and stay here long-term.
Okay, so when you're deciding what's the best option for you, certainly there's a lot of options. We talked about aging in place, we talked about home care, CCRCs, assisted living, independent living, there's a ton of them. So the best thing, again, to keep in mind is your budget, because these types of entities do cost different, their models work different. Do you have immediate concerns? Like we talked about, CCRCs tend to have a very long waiting list. Certainly if you have the blessing of time, you want to look into that model. Great, but not everyone has that blessing. Do you want to make multiple moves? Would you be okay potentially living separately from your spouse? Do you have that luxury of time? And do you want freedom to make changes without penalty?
So I'm going to just touch on something that's very near and dear to my heart. It's potential with Providence Place, a shameless plug. I've worked for this company for 6 years. And we are truly family owned and operated. Unlike other entities in this Lancaster area, we have a board of directors that oversees us, but we are not being bought out and sold by multiple companies throughout the years. Governor George Leader, former Governor George Leader, he has since passed, but he started Providence Place back in 1998. Our first Providence Place was in Pottsville, and we've grown since. We now have 7 locations in Pennsylvania, soon to be 8 when we open our new Oxford location. So we definitely are always expanding. And today we serve residents of all faith backgrounds. We are not affiliated with any religious organization, which I think allows people to feel as though there's less fear of judgment coming into a community. So there is definitely potential at Providence Place. This is just, let me go back a little bit. That's an example of one of our apartments. That's our dining room in Lancaster, and our Lancaster, the facade of the front in Lancaster.
And talking a little bit more just specifically about our community, and all assisted living communities are a little bit different. So some things about Providence Place: we do serve adults 60 and up. Our youngest resident is 62, and our oldest resident is 105. So we have a very wide range. It's very affordable senior living. You come and go. Residents are able to enjoy active, carefree lifestyles. We do still have residents that have part-time jobs, that volunteer, that are out of the building for extended absences for vacation or just to continue living life as they choose. Also allows you to remain independent. We do offer short-term respite care as well. That's another type of care. Typically like 30 to 60 days, a short-term stay. And we also do accept veteran benefits and long-term care policies like we touched on.
Additional perks, personalized customer support plan. As Peter was talking about earlier, long-term care policies are not able to be effective or approved without there being significant support that is proven to be provided with the resident. So each resident in our assisted living has a personalized support plan, which touches on every aspect of care we provide them, from incontinence management to cognitive functioning, mobility concerns, dietary restrictions, medication management. Anything that we do to support the resident is going to be finalized in this document, which can be utilized for long-term care policies to approve their benefits and make sure that they maintain those benefits. Our cost is all inclusive. Like with some of our other competitors, like Homestead Village, which we love dearly, you have to buy into things like meal plans. There are certain options that, sorry, if you have we love them, but there's different aspects that you have to provide additional funds to. We've tried to be an all-inclusive cost. Maintenance-free lifestyle, transportation and medical appointments within 10 miles are included. That covers the greater Lancaster area. Resident-focused activities, pet-friendly, dogs, cats, birds, whatever you want, bring them along. As long as they don't bite anybody, they can stay with us. Spiritual support, and the main thing, like Brittany touched on, is the respite and short-term care. Some people are not ready to make the ultimate commitment, so they might want to come to us for a short period of time. Or maybe they're looking at they're very close to their threshold to qualify for their Medicaid benefits, and they want their mom or dad to be able to have the luxury of being in a facility that's not a traditional nursing home. Even if it's for a short period of time, we do offer that option for residents. So the financial qualifications that some of our competitors require don't always come into play for us. So we have on-site primary care, on-site imaging and blood draws, on-site therapy. It becomes like their homes become their oasis, and the doctors and the providers come to them, which makes them, I think, a little bit less intimidated. Well, and who better than to hear from than our residents? It's a very short, it's about like a minute and 40-second video. Joan and Mossy are very near and dear to my heart. They are residents at our facility in Chambersburg, but their stories, they're very different people. Their stories kind of showcase the different dynamics and different people that we have on our campus. So just want you guys to watch this really quickly.
Very good. It's amazing what you can do with this brush. Even your teacher makes mistakes on yours and you have to cover them up.
She's something.
Mossy, oh, she's a gem. She is a gem. She's taken me under her wing in art class.
We just kind of clicked. And she's a lovely person. She has that stroke that really makes the painting just stand out.
I was basically introduced by my table mate as the baby of our family here. I am the youngest one here, but that's okay. I'm really happy here.
The doctor said I needed 24-hour care. So we really didn't question any other place. We came directly here.
Yeah, everybody's welcomed me, and I do feel like I belong here. It's home now.
When you come here, I think they do everything they can to make you happy and to feel at home.
And Mossy, unfortunately, doesn't make you cry. Mossy unfortunately passed away about 3 weeks ago. But she was with us for many years. And I promise it's not a sales tactic, it actually is very sad. But she was a Spitfire, but they became very close friends. And we like to remove, we really want to be, it's not a sales tactic, it's not a joke, it really is about family. Our CEO, our COO, our senior VP, everyone from entry-level coworkers to the top want to make sure everyone feels at home. And that's that biggest aspect of this transition is making sure that when you make that change, you're supported and you're just not another number.
And of course, what kind of salespeople would be if we didn't talk about Providence Place?
Yeah.
But that all aside, truly, I think the team here with Paloma, with Attorney Metzbower, with Peter, with Meg, I mean, everybody here, and also there's a lot of resources in the area as well. I just want to make it clear, the purpose of today is for education. I hope that you feel empowered with all of this knowledge and hopefully go do your own research and see what's out there and what's best for you. Again, Katie and I absolutely love Providence Place, but our goal is to help anybody with any of their future planning. So, yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Thank you.